Namaste. Welcome to the monthly Krishna Katha Book Club, February 2025. Here we delve into the teachings of Queen Kunti. Queen Kunti's celebrated prayers are found in the Srimad Bhagavatam 8:26, 18-43, as well as in the book Teachings of Queen Kunti. There are only 26 verses in her prayer, but they are considered a philosophical, theological, and literary masterpiece. The book Teachings of Queen Kunti includes illuminating commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, originally written in 1962, plus further explanations that Bhaktivedanta Swami delivered in an absorbing series of lectures in the spring of 1973 in Los Angeles. Now for some background into who is Queen Kunti. The tragic and heroic figure of Queen Kunti emerges from an explosive era in the history of ancient India. As related in the Mahabharata, India's grand epic poem, Kunti was the wife of King Pandu and the mother of 5 illustrious sons known as the Pandavas. As such, she was one of the central figures in a complex political drama that culminated in the Battle of Kurukshetra. The Mahabharata describes the prelude to that holocaust as follows. Pandu became king because his elder brother, Dhritarashtra, had been born blind, a condition that excluded him from direct succession. Sometime after Pandu ascended to the throne, Dhritarashtra married Gandhari and fathered 100 sons, who became the ruling family of the Kaurava dynasty. The eldest son was the ambitious and cruel Duryodhana. Meanwhile, King Pandu had 2 wives, Madri and Kunti. Kunti was the daughter of Surasena, the chief of the glorious Yadu dynasty. The Mahabharata describes that Kunti was gifted with beauty and character and was strong in her vows. She also possessed an unusual benediction. When she was a child, she was called Pritha, but her father Surasena gave her in adoption to his childless cousin and close friend Kuntiboja. Hence, her name was changed to Kunti. In her adopted father's house, even though she was still a child, Kunti's duty was to look after the welfare of guests. One day the powerful sage and mystic Dwarka came there and was pleased by Kunti's selfless service. Foreseeing that she would have difficulty conceiving sons, Dwarka gave her the benediction that she could invoke any demigod and by him obtain progeny. Years later, when Kunti married King Pandu, he was placed under a curse that prevented him from begetting children. Subsequently, he renounced the throne and retired with his 2 wives to the forest. There, Kunti's special benediction enabled her to conceive, at her husband's request, 3 glorious sons. First, she invoked Dharma, the demigod of religion. After worshipping him and repeating the invocation that Dwarka had taught her, she united with Dharma and, in time, gave birth to a boy. As soon as the child was born, a voice with no visible source said, "This child will be called Yudhisthira, and he will be very virtuous. He will be splendid, determined, renounced, and famous throughout the 3 worlds." Having been blessed with this virtuous son, Pandu then asked Kunti for a son of great physical strength. Thus Kunti invoked Vayu, the demigod of the wind, from whom she begot the mighty Bhima. Upon Bhima's birth, the supernatural voice said, "This child will be the foremost of all strong men." Thereafter, Pandu consulted with the great sages in the forest and then asked Kunti to observe vows of austerity for 1 full year. At the end of this time, Pandu said to Kunti, "O beautiful one, Indra, the king of heaven, is pleased with you, so invoke him and conceive a son." Kunti then invoked Indra, from whom she begot Arjuna. As soon as the prince was born, the same celestial voice boomed through the sky, "O Kunti, this child will be invincible in battle." Those were the 3 sons of Kunti, Yudhisthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. Subsequently, Kunti gave the invocation to Madri, who bore 2 sons named Nakula and Sahadeva. So these 5 sons of Pandu became known as the Pandavas. Since Pandu had retired from the throne and gone to the forest, his brother, the blind Dhritarashtra, had temporarily assumed the throne until Pandu's eldest son, Yudhisthira, came of age. However, before that time, Pandu and Madri died. That left the 5 Pandavas in the care of Queen Kunti. After Pandu's death, the sages living in the forest brought the 5 young princes and Kunti to the Kaurava court at Hastinapura, which is near present-day Delhi. In Hastinapura, the capital city of the kingdom, the 5 boys were raised in royal style under the guidance of the blind Dhritarashtra and his half-brother, the noble Vidura. But a smooth transfer of power was not to be. Dhritarashtra had at first recognized the right of succession to his brother and then his brother's firstborn son, Yudhisthira. But Dhritarashtra later allowed himself to be used by his eldest son, the power-hungry Duryodhana, who wished to ascend the throne in place of Yudhisthira. Driven by uncontrollable jealousy, Duryodhana plotted against the Pandavas, and with the hesitant approval of his weak father, Duryodhana inflicted many sufferings upon his 5 cousins, the Pandavas. He made several attempts on their lives in Hastinapura, and then he brought them to a provincial palace and tried to assassinate them by having it set on fire. All the while, the 5 young Pandavas were accompanied by their courageous mother Kunti, who suffered Duryodhana's atrocities in the company of her beloved sons. Miraculously, however, Kunti and the Pandavas repeatedly escaped death, for they were under the loving protection of Krishna. Ultimately, Duryodhana, a clever politician, cheated the Pandavas out of their kingdom in a gambling match. As a result of the match, the Pandavas, including their mother Queen Kunti and their wife Draupadi, were exiled for 13 years in the forest. When the 13-year exile ended, the Pandavas returned to Hastinapura to reclaim their kingdom. However, Duryodhana bluntly refused to relinquish it. There followed unsuccessful attempts to quell the hostilities, even with Yudhisthira asking Krishna to secure the return of the Pandava kingdom by peaceful means. But all efforts failed because of Duryodhana's greed, and both sides prepared for battle. To place Yudhisthira on the throne, or to oppose him, great warriors and armies from all corners of the earth assembled, setting the scene for what would be a devastating world war. Fierce fighting raged for 18 days on the historic plain of Kurukshetra, and in the end, all but a handful of the many millions of warriors were dead. At the conclusion of the devastating battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna prepared to depart in his chariot for his home city of Dwarka. Queen Kunti approached him and spontaneously glorified him, and it is these prayers that appear in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam and comprise the prayers in this book, Teachings of Queen Kunti. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada wrote his translation and commentary before coming to the West, but in a series of lectures given in the spring of 1973 in Los Angeles, he analysed Queen Kunti's prayers in significantly greater detail and shed even more light upon them. Queen Kunti's words, the simple and illuminating outpourings of the soul of a great and saintly woman devotee, reveal both the deepest transcendental emotions of the heart and the most profound philosophical and theological penetrations of the intellect. Her words are words of glorification impelled by a divine love steeped in wisdom. Kunti's spontaneous glorification of Lord Krishna and her description of the spiritual path have been recited, chanted, and sung by sages and philosophers for thousands of years. We will now read 8 verses, which are called chapters, in Teachings of Queen Kunti. Verse 6. O Hrishikesh, master of the senses and lord of lords, you have released your mother Devaki who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. Now this following verse 8 is probably my favourite, and it is a much loved verse by many. Verse 8. I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. Verse 9. My Lord, your Lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. Verse 14. My dear Krishna, Yasoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offence, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes, and you were afraid, though fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. Verse 19. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. Verse 21. As the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadus, will end at once. Verse 22. O Gadadhara, Krishna, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore it appears beautiful. But when you leave, it will no longer be so. In the purport by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for verse 22, he included, Kunti Devi thinks, as long as Krishna is with us, everything in our kingdom and our capital, Hastinapura, is beautiful. But when Krishna is absent, our kingdom will not be beautiful. She says, Krishna, you are now walking in our kingdom, and the impressions of your footprints are making everything beautiful. There is sufficient water and fruit, and everything looks beautiful. But when you leave us, it will not look beautiful. Verse 25 of the 26 verses. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you, without being divided to anyone else. So Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada concludes this book. Queen Kunti prayed to the Lord just to enunciate a fragment of his glories. The Lord, upon hearing her prayers, which were composed in choice words for his glorification, responded by smiling, and his smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. The conditioned souls who are engaged in trying to lord it over the material world are also enchanted by the Lord's mystic powers, but his devotees are enchanted in a different way by the glories of the Lord. Thus all the devotees worship the Lord by chosen words. No amount of chosen words are sufficient to enumerate the Lord's glory, yet He is satisfied by such prayers, just as a father is satisfied even by the broken linguistic attempts of a growing child. Thus the Lord smiled and accepted the prayers of Queen Kunti. Namaste.